Hello, it is I, Dr. Brian Lorgon111, and welcome back to Heroes Spirit. I'm on this screen just because I like the music here. This is going to be kind of a talky episode, and so this will be some good music to have in the background. But yeah, I have been chatting with one of the developers, and while there is a number of other kind of weird mechanics and Easter eggs and some other crazy game stuff to do, it seems that I've seen all the maps in this game, so I think I'm ready to at least put it aside for now. But I do want to have a bit of like post-game wrap-up talk, and there's still some other things I'm working on, so I wanted to kind of talk through those. So first up, I wanted to show the maps and notes that I have taken and drawn. And so in no particular order, here's the papers that I've written down. So this first one is the 3 stages of the witch fight and where you find your various items. So in stage 1, the boots were to the left, the shield was on the right wall, the broom also ended up over there at the end, and the blue sword was almost straight up and slightly to the right inside some cobwebs. In stage 2, compass was in the upper left behind a light blue door, the lava charm was right a screen and then down and slightly to the right. The blue sword and the glasses were near the right edge after picking those up, and then more to the bottom right was the mirror, which kind of got added a little bit later. Look for secrets, I have. Yeah, I did need to look for a secret there. The key was to the left and the eye was to the upper right. And then in stage 3, the hammer was in the left side, locked in a building in Eldwig. The blue sword was behind a blue door in the north dark lava mountains, and the ring was outside the castle in the cyan left door. And then I just had some other notes that I was just like writing down text when I was in the corrupted castle. About the different Trial of Mind and Trial of Will, like all the names of the keys of the area, Key of Wander, Key of Seeking, Key of Death, in case those words ended up being important. And yeah, at the bottom, when I hadn't collected all the items in the final witch fight, I was also writing down like items that I hadn't found yet. In any case, that's what's written on that page. And yeah, not all of them are as wordy as that. I think you guys may have seen this once before, but this is me mapping out the interior of the invisible walkway on the castle grounds through Castle Monolith in order to get to the backdoor dragon and the glitch zone with the green door. And as you can see, my mapping kind of went off the page a few times along the way, but that's what that page looked like. Castle Monolith, the interior. Like the spider's nest in the upper left and the lower right, I didn't map out because it was mostly kind of an open area with just a few kind of twists and turns or whatever. But there were a few areas, especially where the teleports were in 3 different spots or so throughout the castle, that I marked up a little bit more clearly and kind of drew the routes through. Yeah. And yeah, when it teleported me to like a strange place that didn't exist kind of elsewhere or whatever, like there's a spot above the castle and a spot below the castle, where I drew things kind of separately on that Castle Monolith map. The dungeons, didn't map all of them, but you can see the Hall of Doors on the left and the little escape tunnel that goes to South Mundaman, even further outside to the left there. And then, yeah, I mapped the left side pretty well. Because especially after I got the mirror and you could kind of like come in through the bottom or go through the Hall of Doors and come in through the top, kind of going back and forth between those was good. And yeah, somewhere near the upper right-ish, you can see a question mark and then CM secret exit as the Castle Monolith secret exit that was kind of below the little question mark brick over there. I marked the NPCs where they were. Mystic Wind Ring in the bottom right is where we pick that up, although it becomes the Smuggler's Key in New Game Plus and New Game Plus 2. And a few of the NPC quotes are also kind of written in chicken scratching that you probably can't read very well there. But that's my partial map of the dungeons. The center area is not very well mapped. The tundra, this is more accustomed to what I did throughout many of the zones, which is I just have the name of the full zone, the tundra, at the top, and then each time the bottom right-hand side of the screen had kind of a named sub-area. I would write those named sub-areas and then just kind of give a general sense of how they fit together. And yeah, also map out some teleports. There were a couple of little teleport closets in the tundra. Above the Cave of Wonder near the center, you might be able to see TP and a little dashed line that goes to a TP that's closer to the save on the right-hand side, or the portal. And there was also in the south end of the zone a teleport that brought you from kind of the east end to the west end of the map and back. Marked where the path to the Dust Shelf was, Devil's Wall. There's a left arrow to HG for the most part. I had like 2 letter symbols for each zone. So HG, of course, is Hallowed Grounds, and so that's just showing that there's exits to the Hallowed Grounds on the left. There's FS, which is Frozen Shore in the top right. There's NM, which is North Mundaman, near the bottom right with an arrow. And so that's how I kind of showed the connectedness between the different zones. The Verdant Coast was one that I never mapped extremely well, but here is kind of the rough idea of how this area is laid out. And yeah, the fact that I didn't map this one very well is probably why it took me so long to find that little teleport closet that brings you to the area that gets you to the spiral in the back of the path to the Heart of Lies eventually, which is one of the things that I needed hints for. South Mundaman, this one I drew kind of like where lines are kind of the paths you can take, and I screwed it up a little bit. And so the part that's at the bottom is supposed to be kind of like plugged into a section at the top that I didn't map properly. And not all of the connections are here, because there was a lot of places where you could walk through walls, or once you get the Mystic Wind Ring, walk across the water. But it gives, I don't know, kind of a sense of how this place is laid out. South Mundaman, despite being pretty weirdly connected and confusing, is actually not all that large of an area, it feels like. Luttershore was pretty wide open. So there wasn't a whole lot to write here other than kind of area names and the relative locations of things, as well as where the portal and the save crystal. The portal, or the save crystal I have is kind of like a square tilted on its side, so it's kind of like a diamond or a diagonal square. And then the portal is kind of that same thing surrounded by a box, and so you can see both of them near the right side of this map. That was my way to mark up those locations on all my maps. Southern Swamp, also not a very big area, so there wasn't a whole lot to describe kind of drawing here. Mostly just kind of area names. And then also the fact that it had the passage to the Dust Shelf. I didn't map the Dust Shelf anywhere, but I just made some notes here on the Southern Swamp map about Dust Shelf had the Wandering Road, and eventually goes to the tunnels where I got a compass, and then exited back out into the Tundra West Mountains, which you can see in the bottom right. And that changed slightly in New Game Plus. Molten Cavern, I never mapped. I did end up in New Game Plus, eventually just looking at a map of this place. It's enormous, just to help me not get lost when I was trying to like find all the final P coins and different things. I looked at a few of the maps online by the end of the game. The tunnels, this is a very poor map. It's incomplete. The tunnels, there's like 3 sections that aren't connected to one another, and they kind of go around, and this is one of the weird maps that there's always like a teleport from north to south and from east to west, so you can kind of like wrap around through the tunnels, and a few other side areas go through there. So this is not a very good map, and the tunnels is mostly just a place that I kind of know in my brain, as opposed to kind of having mapped out. The castle grounds, yeah, this gives you a sense of what they look like. I noted, for example, Moonlit Isles and Secret Area were kind of where you got the green gem that was off in the water, kind of to the left of Eldwig. And Dolphin Rock was the name of the little island at the bottom left out of Eldwig, or the Tideway, where you picked up like a P coin or something once you got the Mystic Wind Ring. But for the most part, this just had a bunch of exits to other places. And for example, in the upper right, shop, and then later it has like a little arrow that says Smuggler's Ruins, once I discovered the secret passages in the shop. Let's move on. Frozen Shore, also a very open area, so there wasn't a whole lot here other than here are the various area transitions. And when I didn't have the Mystic Wind Ring, at some point Smuggler's Ruin came out into the ice fields, and I didn't know where to put it, and I put it on the upper left of the map, and then after I got the Mystic Wind Ring so I could walk around, I discovered it was actually in the lower right of the map, and so there's a big arrow circling that area that points it into the lower right. But yeah, there wasn't a whole lot here. Dancer's Point and the water walking to get to the Otherworld portal. Most of these maps were only drawn in the original game, and so, for example, the Green Key I guess that was in the original game. Some of the late game stuff, like, I never added to the map, but I just know that that's up at Dancer's Points where you pick that up as well. Smuggler's Ruin. There's still the area kind of in the lower left of this that kind of didn't make sense. I guess this is the before it gets transformed after you pick up the eye the first time. I guess it's called like Smuggler's Road afterwards or something. I don't remember if the or an ancient tomb, maybe the sub area name changes. I can't remember exactly, but it has all the same exits. So this was kind of the before map. North Mundaman, I didn't map this one very well. Whenever I had a final gold key to spend, I always found it in here somewhere, because I never mapped this very well. There are a number of locked doors and a number of kind of little weird hideaways in it, and so I've got some partial information as well as kind of like where I picked up the blue key and the various exits, or at least most of them. I think I'm actually still missing one or two of them. Hallowed Ground is not a very big area, so there wasn't a whole lot to put on here other than the Lookaway Shore. It was from the north end of the Devil's Wall, and the main entrance was to the tundra in the south end to the Devil's Wall. And I did not map the Haunted Manse. The Underworld. So late game, once we got New Game Plus, tried mapping this. I drew a bit of it before I realized where the teleports were. So it's kind of a mess, and so I have it in 3 or 4 segments with long arrows that's like, actually this connects over here, and actually this connects over here. So it'd be interesting to go back and redraw this as one continuous map, the way that it actually is kind of laid out. But basically I had the name of the areas, where there were save crystals, and where there were doorways. If you see, for example, the Cave of Origins kind of like in the center of the page, and to the bottom right of it is CG in a box, which is Castle Grounds, and to the upper left of it is VC in a box, which is Verdant Coast. So basically every time there was a doorway back out to the main portion of the map, I just put the 2-letter initials of that place in a box. Convergence, when I was solving the puzzle with all 3 of us walking around, and 2 of them had to light up the things at the same time. This is kind of the map I drew, and then how they were connected to one another and what doors. If it's like a down right arrow, that means that that's going to light up the bottom right of the 8 lights for the unlocking kind of thing. And then finally, this was kind of the overview. Near the bottom, you see the main area names: Castle Grounds, South Mundaman, the Tunnels, Southern Swamp, etc. And lines between them just show the connections. So Castle Grounds has a way to go into South Mundaman, or into the Tunnels to the north, or into the Southern Swamp to the west, or into the Sanctuary further south to the west. And 2 ways to go between the Castle Grounds and the Verdant Coast in the east. Because you could go into the Verdant Coast, and then you could head south and then swing back around and go to like a secret door that got up to the Castle Grounds stuff that you couldn't get to otherwise. So yeah, those are kind of all the main connections. In the upper portion of this page, I was originally just trying to list the main areas and if I'd cleared them out of all the loot. And so that's what kind of like the check marks were. And this was before I realized that the eye was, pointing at the items you could find. And then the upper right shops bought out. There were 5 different shops, 1 in Castle Grounds, 1 in South Mundaman, 1 in Lettershore, 1 in the Tunnels, and 1 in the Tundra. And so when I bought out those shops, I would put check marks there. Near the bottom right, there's a box that has kind of the layout of the Sanctuary portals. And then there's a bunch of named areas that don't appear on this map: Dust Shelf, Castle Monolith, Dungeons, Haunted Manse, Molten Cavern, Underworld, Otherworld, question mark, and Corrupted Castle, and eventually Convergence. And so I just wanted to have a list of all of the names of the areas, and so I just added it to here. So that is most of the mapping that I did. Since recording the last episode, I've been watching a friend of mine, Asher, who's been streaming this game on Twitch, and some of the developers have been in his chat, and other people who've played the game have been offering a little bit of steering and hints. And so you will recall at the end of, I think it was like episode 27 or so, there was a time that I got like a hint that, an NPC said something like, "Hey, I bet that bunny rabbit of yours likes playing with the blue slimes," or something like that. And I spent like 10 minutes trying to get my bunny to get on the same square as a blue slime to see what would happen. And I finally did it, and nothing happened. Well, that might have been a bug, or there might be something fishing going on, because it turns out if you can get the bunny to overlap a slime, the bunny will kill the slime. blue slimes only have 5 attack power, and they're the only enemy that the bunny can kill at the beginning of the game. However, if you kill 5 blue slimes with the bunny, then the bunny gets stronger and can kill level 10 bats. And if you kill 5 of those, then the bunny gets stronger and can kill level 15 cave spiders, etc., etc. And so last time I was watching Asher stream, he was in the process of leveling up the bunny and had gotten the bunny up to like level 70 attack power or something. And so turns out that NPC hint, like I was interpreting it correctly, but I just did not get the appropriate feedback when I did the action. And so I'm happy to have just learned about that from watching someone else get hints about it and play around with that mechanic. And apparently if you get the bunny like all the way up to level 99, you can do something clever and something will happen, and I don't know what that is. But I don't plan to investigate that on my own. Like eventually I'll watch someone else play the game probably and see what happens there. Then I was talking to one of the developers, and they said there's some interesting things if you take a look at the save files of the game. So it took me a little while to find out where the save files are. But the next thing that I will show is an example. Oh, actually, no. Let me go. Okay, I'm pulling up the correct portion of my notes. Okay, so there's save data, or save dat A, there's save dat B, and save dat C for your 3 save files. And if you just open up the file in Notepad, it looks kind of like here, which I have shown on the screen now, which, if you are me, or a programmer who's done stuff with different data exchange or whatever, is clearly a JSON format file for the most part, except for it's kind of scrambled. JSON is JavaScript object notation, and it's just a common way to write data to files or whatever to be kind of human readable and also easily machine readable. And so I'm in the process of trying to decode like how this got scrambled and unscrambled. And so basically what I discovered is there's a number at the beginning, like a 10-digit number, and that's the number of steps that you have taken. So you'll recall when we win the game, like one of the things is it shows how many steps, did you walk around on all the maps. And at this point, apparently it was 85,234. But the number of steps ends up affecting the way that the letters of the JSON file are shuffled. And so I'm going to show you some of my notes where basically I would save the game, load up the save file in Notepad, grab the first 70 characters or so and the last 70 characters or so of the file, save them to a separate dummy file where I was investigating. Then re-enter Hero Spirit, save the game again, and the act of like pressing against the save crystal to save the game counts as 1 step, and so it increased my step count. And then getting the first few characters and the last few characters and saving them to the file, and I did that over and over and over again. And I discovered that every 21 steps it loops. And so you can see a bunch of save counts here or whatever, but 85,233 ended up having the exact same text as 85,212, and 233 and 212 like differ by 21. And the same thing for 234 and 213. So basically, there are 21 different possible ways that the JSON file gets shuffled. And then at the bottom, you can see me kind of guessing at what the unshuffling is, because most of it in the middle is kind of numbers and booleans, which is kind of gibberish. But the beginning and the end, position and values and playtime and deaths and label, and the label is always the name of the area that you're at that ends up showing up on the when you load your game screen or whatever. Those were kind of like obvious bits of text that I was able to decode. And so yeah, now I'm just trying to figure out what algorithm is used to scramble it, and I'm kind of making some progress on that, but it's something I'm still just working on my own. So eventually, if I figure that out, it probably means I'll be able to go and poke bits of the save data, and apparently funny stuff might happen if you do that. So on my own, I'm going to continue to do this, and if I have any interesting things to report, you'll hear about them in some future episode, I imagine. I have other thoughts in terms of just kind of like the overview of this game. But I'll probably save a bit of those for when I eventually do some kind of podcasty type recording interview with one of the developers, which I plan to do at some point in the near future. So look forward to that. But I think that's probably good. I'm going to say I hope, as always, that you guys are having a great day, and I will see you again soon with who knows what. For now, bye-bye.